Good morning, Texoma. I'm Ashley Fitzwater. This morning, we're taking a look at the best of only on 6 stories that we brought you throughout the month of November. They're in-depth stories highlighting issues that affect you and your family. Now, we begin with a focus on volunteer firefighters. Nationally, the overall numbers are declining, but News Channel 6 has uncovered troubling numbers on their way up. That's the age of firefighters in rural departments, which affects just about every department that protects you.
There are many communities that just cannot afford a paid fire department, and the only way they can get any protection at all is through the volunteer fire service.
You get into a situation where we literally can't run another truck.
Volunteer fire departments save lives and property and do so on a regular basis. The worst fire season and the worst drought in history unfortunately proved that to us over and over again this spring and summer. And that danger will increase as we head into the dry winter months. Volunteer fire departments play a vital role in your protection when flames break out. But the men and women who risk their lives on a sometimes daily basis are aging. Former Wichita Falls Fire Chief and 50-year career firefighter Ronnie James recognizes this problem and is watching the volunteer fire service change before his eyes.
We have the guys that's been in the volunteer fire service for quite some time, and they're starting to age and get out of it.
We went from about 880,000 volunteer firefighters across the U.S. to about 800,000 in a decade. We lost about 80,000 volunteer firefighters.
The problem is not just age, but it's replacing those who have gotten too old to hit the fire lines and have stepped down.
We're not filling in at the bottom because of our society just is so different today. There's too many things to do.
In the rural areas, you're going to have, a more older population that's continuing to volunteer and support their communities. They just don't have the numbers to draw from.
Of the volunteer fire departments News Channel 6 spoke to, all but one said they need more volunteers on a consistent basis.
We can always use more help. There's no doubt about it.
Burke-Burnett Fire Chief Rodney Rawls says he's lucky. He has a number of younger volunteers, but keeping them is a problem, despite the fact that he's seen more interest.
You have seasons like we've just had with the wildfire season, and more people see the need, and they kind of come in and get involved, and then some of those folks stay, and some of those folks find out maybe that's just not the thing for them, or they don't have the time.
The executive director of the State Firemen's and Fire Marshals Association of Texas said that the average age of a firefighter in the state of Texas is right at 32 years old, but he said it's an ironic number for rural departments whose average age is higher. The departments with the older members are challenged to find the right mix between older and younger firefighters. So where does that process begin?
I think it just starts at home. I mean, the older guys still have a little bit of a volunteer attitude, whereas the younger guys, the younger folks, the younger generation are more, what's in it for me? What can I get out of it? We're not paying. So this is about as selfless as you can get.
The idea of being in a volunteer fire service, that takes a lot of time, a lot of training. It's dangerous, and to recruit and have the retention for that younger volunteer is very difficult.
Texas Forest Service Regional Fire Coordinator Michael McGuire says the trend is starting to show more youth showing interest and following through to replace some of the aging firefighters who are stepping down.
It's clear that a lot of the volunteers have older members, but I think we've seen a trend in the last couple years that we're starting to see more younger men and women coming out to serve their community.
Those who work on a daily basis with volunteer fire departments are working to get the word out that volunteers don't always have to be the men and women who are on the trucks knocking down the damaging flames.
Some folks can make a difference just by writing a check. We're perfectly happy with that. We're ecstatic with that.
Those who train volunteer firefighters are teaching them how to deal with the aging population to keep them serving their communities.
Find alternate ways for those people who might not be of the greatest physical ability to help fight fires, but they can do things other than fight fires. They can do accounting, they can do payroll or whatever they can do, as long as they have other talents that the fire department can use.
Chris Horgan, News Channel 6.
As departments continue to recruit younger volunteers, News Channel 6 wanted to know more about their training. Our full report showcasing our visit to a fire school for volunteers can be found in the Only on 6 section under News at newschannel6now.com. Now, we also brought you the very latest on the dangers of secondhand smoke, and the findings are startling. Studies show that it not only puts kids at a greater risk of having asthma and health problems, but it also increases their risk of developing learning disabilities. There's nothing more Deborah Sain adores more in this world than her grandbabies, 6-year-old Piper and 3-year-old Sean. Deborah says she smoked off and on for decades and a good 10 years consistently. But it was little Piper that helped this grandma put down her cigarettes forever.
I couldn't smoke with her in the house. I always had to go outside. I didn't smoke with her in the car. And it was just easy to just do it because if I smoked around her, she was smoking. And it's just not healthy.
Deborah is now 5 years smoke-free.
One of the hardest things I ever did was to quit smoking because it is very addictive.
But knowing the risk it carries, Deborah knew it was a must.
You don't think of it as a big deal just for myself, but then when you bring grandchildren in, it's a big deal. It's a big deal because you want them to be healthy.
And the true dangers of secondhand smoke are just, in fact, startling, especially in younger children. One of those dangers is, of course, asthma. And there's a great example here. Here's a look at a clear airway with no asthma. But take a look at this. This is a lung with asthma. That's why Dr. Don Peters says from the moment a pregnant woman walks in the door, they're told about the dangers of cigarette smoke, whether they smoke or not.
It has very negative effects on the infant and the delivery process when that comes. And then of course it's encouraged and continued in my office just how bad secondhand cigarette smoke is for the infants, the babies, the kids.
Dr. Peters says kids around secondhand smoke are more prone to get sick and more prone to have respiratory illnesses than a child who's not exposed. Dr. Peters says their sicknesses or illnesses are also more severe. But that's not all. New studies revealing the danger of secondhand smoke are coming out all of the time, and those findings are often hard to hear.
We're finding more and more every day. People are turning up with cancer that have never smoked a day in their life. It's almost worse than the first-hand smoke.
And the dangers only seem to be increasing. The latest study that came out just a few months ago finds
a very high association between secondhand cigarette smoke and behavior disturbances, ADHD, autism, those type of neurological and behavioral disorders.
Dr. Peters says secondhand smoke is not a cause of those disorders, but instead a high association, basically meaning it increases your child's risk by about 12%.
So whatever all of the environmental cues are, that's a big one because it's always present when we're seeing these higher levels of like I said, the learning disabilities and the ADHD. So there's something going on there.
Dr. Peters has no doubt that more and more tests will be coming out. Long-term exposure, of course, carries the most risk, but Dr. Peters says you can be exposed to cigarette smoke just once and have an asthma attack, even a respiratory infection, something Deborah is living proof of.
If I'm around cigarettes now, if I'm around people who smoke, it aggravates the asthma. So I'm sure it is the secondhand smoke that makes it worse.
And Dr. Peters says the younger you are, the worse it is, something that encourages Deborah to never light up again. Now, many smokers feel what's the use in quitting because the damage is done, but Dr. Don Peters is quick to add that things will get better, even improve, if you simply take away the cigarette exposure. Next, on Inside Texoma, meth homes are on the market and you could buy one without even knowing it. What to look out for next on Inside Texoma. You're watching Inside Texoma as we take a look back at some of the best stories shown only on 6. This next story uncovered potential dangers in Texoma neighborhoods, all as families continue to buy and rent houses once used as meth labs. The dangerous chemicals used to make meth can seep into the walls, the carpet, your faucets, even cause some serious health issues.
They have special protective suits, gloves, and breathing equipment that they use prior to entering the house to dispose of the labs.
The chemicals used to make meth are dangerous. That's why law enforcement takes every precaution when cleaning up these labs.
Most of the chemicals that you come across in meth labs are toxic and they are combustible, flammable.
Residue from a dangerous cocktail of anhydrous ammonia, methanol, and other hazardous chemicals stays behind once the lab is long gone.
You can experience lightheadedness, dizziness, chest pain, fatigue, things like that are some of the common short-term symptoms that you may experience.
Wichita Falls Police Officer Timothy Johnson says these symptoms are just from short-term exposure. There are a number of serious health concerns linked to the chemicals used.
Cancer, brain damage, liver damage, miscarriages, birth defects.
We met with Service Masters, a professional cleaning company, to learn more. General Manager Frank McKnight says the toxic residue can get on the walls, ceilings, and soaks into any fabrics in the house like carpet and furniture.
Depending on what's happened in the house, they put a lot of stuff down the drain, and you would have to remove commodes. Chances are you might have to remove showers or tubs, and then go down and replace, conceivably have to replace the plumbing in the house.
Learning about your home's dark past starts with reading the fine print. If you're buying a home that is a former meth lab, the seller is supposed to inform you. Wichita Falls realtor Ashton Gustafson tells us you'll find that in the disclosure notice. We got a copy of one, and as you can see, it's one line asking if the property has ever been used for manufacture of methamphetamine. The yes or no option is buried among some 30+ others the seller signs off on as being true.
So really it just comes down to honesty.
Yes.
So you could easily get into a situation where you are unaware.
Yes, you could.
News Channel 6 alerted a Wichita Falls family to dangers in their home. They had no idea their house had once been the site of a Nazi meth lab. The homeowners didn't want to talk on camera, but were shocked when we told them what had taken place in their home. The family was never told police raided it in 2000, finding not only chemicals and equipment used to make the drug, but also a video surveillance system, night vision equipment, and police scanners. It happened in this neighborhood, not a place many people would expect such an elaborate operation. So how did we find out about the bust on Beard? Well, it wasn't an easy process. We started with the U.S. Justice Department's National Clandestine Laboratory Register. On it, 67 Wichita County addresses dating back to 2004 indicate the presence of drug labs or dump sites. However, there is a disclaimer stating these locations are not verified and to contact local law enforcement agencies to confirm what happened there. So before knocking on doors, that's exactly what we did. We reached out to Wichita Falls Police, the Texas Department of Public Safety, the Wichita County Sheriff's Office, and the District Attorney's Office. After finding out which homes actually had full-blown labs, for our own safety, we then had to confirm different people now lived in the home, in case the suspects arrested in the bust had bonded out and still lived there. Through the 4 law enforcement agencies, we were only able to find out this information on 2 of the nearly 70 addresses on the register. The home on Beard and another on Pecan Way Drive. The people who live in the Pecan Way house did know the home's history. They had purchased the property from a bail bondsman several years ago. Although they too didn't want to go on camera, they told us the home was cleaned before they moved in. So what can you do to assure the safety of your home?
Take a look around the property. If you see things outside like propane tanks, used fire extinguishers that have been opened, again, plasticware, wooden spoons, coffee filters, empty cans of camping fuel, things along those lines.
Although you may not notice visible signs if the seller is not the criminal and the drug lab was there long before they moved in. But there are other ways to find out what went on years ago in the place you're about to call home.
You can do like maybe a public records check of your address, talk to the neighbors, see what they've had to say about maybe the people who lived there before you or some type of activity that's gone on that could help you make a more informed decision.
Lindsay Forrest, News Channel 6.
Keep in mind that a number of drug labs are never discovered, so if you have suspicions, officials recommend contacting an industrial hygienist to test for meth residue. More on how to do so can all be found at newschannel6now.com. Stay with us. We have more Inside Texoma after